Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining the Garrison Institute's live interactive webinar. Today, our guest is Jessica Morey. Jessica Morey is the lead teacher and co-founder of Inward Bound Mindfulness Education, www.ivme.com. Before joining IVMe, Jessica worked in clean energy and climate policy and finance at the World Bank, the Pew Center on Climate Change, and the Clean Energy States Alliance. Her published works range from the chapter Ordinary Awakening and Blue Jean Buddha to conflict resolution of the Baruca Hydro Energy Project, renewable energy production in Costa Rica. Before we begin today's session, I'll go over a few logistical items about our gathering. We're on a Zoom webinar, so participant audio and video are off. And you'll only see me and you'll only see myself for the time being, and then Jessica. For anyone unable to attend live, we are recording these sessions. You will have a chance to review our recordings as well as a schedule of upcoming programs at www.garrisoninstitute.org. We offer these sessions free of charge as goodwill gesture to support our community during such times of heightened uncertainty. We would welcome donations of any amount to help us continue to offer these sessions. Thank you. Finally, we'll have time for Q&A during this gathering. You can post your questions in the Q&A panel, which is located at the bottom of your screen by hovering your arrow over the Q&A button. We're on for an hour today, and we'll respond to as many questions as we can. Please forgive us if we're unable to get to your question. Thank you again, Jessica, for being with us today, and I will turn it over to you.
Okay, welcome again, everyone. It's good to be with you on this afternoon. And I'd like to invite us to step into a kind of ritual space for the next hour or so as we do this work, to create a kind of container to hold what can be some pretty intense work that we may do together. So to step into that space, I invite you to take a few deeper breaths. And using your breath to call your attention into your body. On your inhale, inviting yourself to be here and present, the space around you, your body. And on your exhale, I invite you to let go of whatever you might have been doing before you arrived here. Maybe you have some multitasking happening and you might decide you want to let that go just for this hour. So inhaling, it's like you're pulling your potentially scattered attention here, feeling your feet on the ground, your seat on the cushion if you're seated. Exhaling, releasing and softening, letting go of what might be calling your attention. And having a sense of stepping into this time and space together where we can do some work, begin some work together. And so also connecting your attention with all the points of contact of your body with the ground or the chair underneath you. So feeling the weight of your body, getting a sense of gravity. And then let your attention drop down beneath you, all the way down into the earth underneath us. So even if you're on a high rise, multi-stories up, let your attention track down, down, down to the foundation of the building, which is supported by the earth. which is spreading out in all directions underneath us, supporting all of us equally. This vast living presence. And if you can allow yourself to do that, to imagine letting your awareness drop down into the earth, notice how that feels in your body when you do that. One of my good friends has called us the earth sprouts. We are earth sprouts. So this is almost a way of reconnecting with our greater body. And so from this place of support and groundedness and presence, we'll enter into this time together. And if your eyes are closed, you can open them if that feels good to you. And also, if you're someone who's been staring a lot at a computer, I invite you at any time to let your gaze wander. If you have any nature in your space or out a window, to let your gaze rest on the plants or the birds or trees, whatever you can see in your space. So letting that nature be a part of this workshop as well. And so what I want to talk about today, this afternoon, is what we might be learning from this pandemic and how this might be a kind of practice run for us in terms of how we relate to and address the climate challenge. I think there's a lot of relationship between what's happening now and a lot that we can learn and also use this time for preparation, basically. And I want to base this work around, or I will base this work around the work of Joanna Macy. And one reason is celebrating her 91st birthday. She just turned 91 on May 2nd. And if you don't know the work of Joanna Macy, I really highly recommend checking her out. And actually, I did a retreat with her a few years ago at the Garrison Institute. That was really, really powerful. So I highly recommend checking out all of Joanna's books and her work. And so I'm going to frame the beginning of this session around the 3 stories that the work that Reconnects has outlined. And they're really just the stories of kind of what's happening or might happen in the future. And those 3 stories are, the first one is business as usual. So if we look at the time of COVID, that's the idea that, there's this crazy situation happening right now. We're all at home, but quickly, as soon as possible, we're going to come out of social isolation where everything's going to open back up. And as fast as possible, we're going to get back on planes and consuming all the oil and go back to life as normal, right? So that would be business as usual, which is made up of capitalism. It's made up of intense environmental destruction. It's made up of heartbreaking inequity, levels of poverty and wealth disparity. So that would be, in this scenario, business as usual. And I remember the first weeks that this happened, actually the very first week, I was supposed to be teaching a retreat with Harvard students, and it got canceled at the very last minute. And so we did it online. And in that moment, I remember being like, oh, wow, this is great. I really like this. I hope this lasts longer than 2 weeks, which is what we thought it might be at that time. So business as usual would be trying to get back to life as soon as we can, right? The next step, or the next story, there's business as usual. The second story is the Great Unraveling. So the Great Unraveling is the story of destruction, that we harm the systems upon which we depend for life to such an extent that it can no longer maintain human life, certainly not at the levels of population that we have today, and also can't sustain or maintain many of the life forms that we share the planet with. And this is certainly happening. We see this happening right now, day after day. We watch the news. So we see melting ice caps at rates that are faster than scientists even predicted. We see the burning Amazon rainforests. We see climate change outside our doors, right? So we also see what's happening with massive violence across and conflict around the world, huge numbers of refugees, political strife and separation. So all of those threads would be part of the story of the Great Unraveling. So there's a way that, okay, yeah, that's what's happening. That's the truth. And then the third story is the Great Turning. So it's the idea that we can actually take this crisis, learn from it, and start making some different decisions. So the Great Turning would be shifting to a life-sustaining culture, a culture that actually values life, that sees all beings, human and non-human beings, as sacred, and cares for those beings. It would be a culture that attends to needs, where we actually, resources flow towards needs rather than towards those who can get them, right? So that would be the Great Turning. And we can also see that happening today as well. There's lots of ways in which you might see threads of the Great Turning. In this pandemic, we see it in the ways that people are being incredibly generous with each other, the mutual aid groups that have started. So there's a way that these three stories are all happening at once. And there's also a way that we individually have a certain amount of power and possibility to choose the story that we want to live into, even though we can't necessarily control the outcome. We can take the steps to move into the story that we want. So how do we do that? And the way that we do that, Joanna has laid out a map or a process that I'm going to share with you, an image. So this is the spiral of this process. With the first step, we start with gratitude at the roots. So to me, what that is about is building up our resources, sustaining ourselves. So connecting into gratitude, to joy, to everything that feeds and nourishes us at this time. And that is always simultaneously happening because life is happening. And so gratitude and joy are there. And then the next step is honoring our pain. And so this is the process by which we learn how to actually feel what's heartbreaking. So for many of us, instead of going towards honoring our pain, we go into numbing out. And I can see the hundreds of ways that I do that, even every day of my life, the ways that I numb out. It just feels way too overwhelming to actually connect with what's happening in the world in any given day. But a major part of this process we need to go through to regain the energy and the wisdom and the creativity to figure out how to shift to the Great Turning is by honoring our pain and actually being in it and feeling it all the way through to release that energy. So the second step is honoring our pain. The third step out of that honoring of our pain is we come to see the world with new eyes. And that's a big piece of what I want to talk about today. And then from that seeing, we go forth. We see what specific actions we could individually do to move towards the Great Turning. So I want to start then with the gratitude practice. And with that in mind, I'd like to invite folks to write into the chat something that you're grateful for right now. So when you do this, like when we share gratitudes, I'd love to invite us to be as specific as possible. Like if there's someone in your life that you're grateful for, your partner or a child, or if you can share what you love about them, or some way that they've been amazing recently or something like this. So anything that you feel that's like has touched your heart recently. So it's gratitude, it's joy, anything that's connected you to the awe of life in the last few days. So if anyone, just, it's open, please come into the chat and share together. Yay. Family is close. Yay. Yes. Warmth of the sunshine. Breeze. Yeah. Outdoor. Ocean. Nice. Lucky you. Spring. Yeah. The acorns germinating. Cardinals. Walking in the woods by a river. Yeah, the stillness. Central Park. Yes, gardening, the birds. So this is so beautiful. See my friends, climate activists, the sunrise. So I'm noticing that so much of what resources us and brings us gratitude and joy and connection is nature. So with that, yeah, and also children laughing for sure. Love this. Mutual aid in Brooklyn. Okay, so with that in mind, I'm going to guide us in a practice, which is a practice. It's called the 4 Elements meditation. And this practice helps us ground and settle, but also connect with all the elements in nature. And notice how our bodies and systems are no different from what's around us, the natural elements around us. So I invite you to come into whatever a comfortable position is for you. So it can be standing, it can be sitting, it can be lying down. And take a few deeper breaths. And again, just beginning this practice, it can be beautiful to begin any meditation practice by coming into gratitude and joy. It just sort of conditions your mind. This is actually a very skillful way to practice. So even as we begin this short meditation, bring to mind again what you're grateful for, or maybe celebrating what other people have shared. Connecting with that and feeling it in your body. When you connect with the gratitude, what do you notice in your body? Okay, and so again, we'll begin the 4 elements with earth, the element or quality of earth. And so we can allow our attention again to connect with all of the places that our body is in contact with the ground. Knowing that beneath us is the earth, and this is creating gravity. So we can feel the weightiness of our bodies, our solidity. And the way that we can feel the earth in our body is noticing all the places of contact. So the edges of our body where our hands touch. And you can scan briefly through your body from the top of your head, just feeling the solidity of this body. Bones, muscles. You might say to yourself, this is earth. This is earth in my body. My body is made up of earth. And then shifting our attention to the water element. So feeling in your body all the places of wetness or water. So you might feel your mouth. And just noticing wetness, water element here. Water element also is really evident in our circulation. So you might notice if you feel the pulse of your blood in your body. You can say to yourself, this is water. This is the water element in my body. We know that our bodies are made up of something like 70% liquid. So every cell is made up of water. And knowing there's no separation, there's nothing different about the water in my body and the water of the earth, the rivers, the oceans, the rain. And the next element is fire element. So you can feel in your body all the places of heat or coolness. So again, scanning through your body and just noticing temperature. Places of heat, places of coolness. Feeling the heat coming from the inside and knowing that this heat is made possible by the food that we eat. Conversion of energy, and that is all made possible by the sun. So there's a very intimate relationship between the sun, fire of the sun, and the fire in our bodies. And the final element is air element. So an easy way to feel air element is to pay attention to your breath. Feeling the air coming and going. The flow of air at your nose into your chest. And our breath is a really direct way to experience the interdependence of this body with the world around it. So as we breathe, noticing, when does the air become me? When does the air become my breath? When does my exhale become the air? So taking another moment to just feel your whole body sitting or standing here. And allowing your awareness to really widen, including the elements in your body, outside of your body. Knowing there's really no difference. We're very, very directly made up of the world around us and constantly exchanging elements and energy. And then when you're ready, if your eyes have been closed, I invite you to open your eyes. You might take a moment just to stretch out your body, look around a second, look around your space. Thank you for your practice. And so from this place of being grounded in our interconnection, I want to invite us to shift into the second step in this path of reconnecting to life, which is the mourning, the element of mourning. And Joanna calls it honoring our pain. And so mourning has been a huge practice for me over the past maybe 3 or 4 years. I've been working with an amazing teacher named Mickey Kashdan. And Mickey Kashdan comes from the nonviolent communication world. And she's one of the greatest inspirations in my life at this time. So I highly recommend also, I'll read some quotes by her, and if they inspire you, you might want to check out some of her work. Mickey Kashdan, M-I-K-I, Kashdan, K-S-H-T-N. So Mickey she's been working with me in my organization at IBME to help us establish more collaborative systems within the organization. And so to me, that work that we're doing at IBME is squarely in the Great Turning. So we're shifting away from a really hierarchical power structure where I was the executive director and could basically tell everyone what to do and control people's income and all of the normal ways that we tend to function in hierarchical business structures. So, and even as nonprofits, we tend to function in those ways because this is our conditioning as in business as usual. So we've been working with Mickey to shift that structure to one where all the voices matter equally, that people are working from a space of willingness rather than any kind of force or control. And where resources, we're trying to shift as much as possible to resources being shared and allocated based on need and away from questions of deserve, who's more valuable, whose work is more valuable, who deserves more based on these conditions that we have culturally decided are more valuable. So we're doing this work, and a lot of what that has entailed for me is Mickey personally coaching me, and a lot of what it has entailed for me is also doing a ton of mourning. It's been interesting to think about, like, giving up control has necessitated a huge amount of mourning for me because actually that control is about some sense of trying to protect myself. And I feel like I need to protect myself because at some point there was some overwhelming harm. There's some situation that was uncontrollable. It was so painful that we developed these systems of self-protection, which involve a lot of controlling. And so in the process of letting go of control within this organization, I've had to face all of this like armor that I've created. And underneath that is like a ton of grief. And so what Mickey, I'm going to share this quote from her on mourning. She says, "Mourning is what allows us to bridge the gap between what we see and what we long for. The gap of our helplessness, without having to inflict violence internally or externally." So again, mourning is what allows us to bridge the gap between what we see and what we long for. The gap of our helplessness. So mourning allows us to bridge that gap without having to inflict violence on ourselves or in the world. And once we do that, on the other side of that, we can find some peace that makes it possible to choose how to respond without reacting. And so she also says that people who mourn are unstoppable. And so I'm going to actually share this quote in the chat so you can see it right there. So as we go into mourning, just having a sense that like there's deep value in mourning. And somehow I find, I don't feel like I was really taught how to mourn well in our culture. And there's this amazing irony in cultures, like the connection between denying or defying death often is connected with denying or defying life. And to me, some of that is this process of mourning. I remember this being really vivid. I was in India, went to India when I was 18 and kind of went on a spiritual quest. And one thing that was so evident to me was that like death was in the public space. You know, in Varanasi, they have the public ghats where bodies are burned, and you can see body parts like on the pyre burning. Carcasses, you'd see carcasses around. Like it was a total shock to me. The smell of death was evident and apparent there, and yet the juxtaposition in that time in India of like also how vibrant life was, how colorful and alive that culture also felt to me. So to me, and what Joanna's saying is that doing this mourning and honoring our pain actually reconnects us to what we love about life. And a quote that Joanna has said is that mourning is just is one of the faces of love, that we grieve and we can only grieve and mourn what we love. And so I just really encourage you. So again, this is a short period to go through this, in whatever ways if this feels inspiring to you, to start exploring grief and mourning, to allow yourself to start to feel into your own grief and mourning with support from people. Like, and one of the things that is powerful is to mourn with other people, to be witnessed in your sadness and your grief. Of course, always remembering our resources and our gratitude that we can come back to. We feel overwhelmed, so we can have a dance between our celebrating and our grief to go back and forth. But it is such a valuable and powerful process to start to honor our pain in all areas of our life. And then this is going to be totally central to preparing ourselves to be at the front lines of climate action. It will be totally vital for us to be doing the grieving work. And I can think about this. So my nickname when I was a little kid, like since 8 years old, was Save-A-Tree. So I was kind of born, there's some part of me that was born with this like love of nature and love of trees. I forced my mom to recycle. I think they also had a really good program at my elementary school about the environment, and it worked for me. So my nickname was Save-A-Tree. When I went to college, I got my degree in environmental engineering, and I was like, I'm going to save the planet. This is what I'm going to do. And I remember like when I would fly at that time in my life, it was like excruciatingly painful for me to see the trash on the airplane. Like that's one of the things that I remember so vividly. Like I can't, and especially aluminum cans. Like if you know the statistics about how much energy goes into creating a new aluminum can versus recycling it, it's devastating to not recycle an aluminum can. Like if you actually look and feel into that. And so at that time I was like, as a young person, and I see this because I work with young people now, like it was so real and alive for me. And I would fly and like spend a big chunk of the time on a plane just like in serious pain about why can't we just like, we could figure this out. We could like recycle these cans. Like it's not that hard. And feeling like people didn't care. And I can see now, like 20 years later, how some part of me had to numb out, you know, like there's times when I've chosen numbing out because it was too painful and overwhelming to actually stay connected to the destruction and all the ways that that's happening all the time around us. So learning how to mourn, having a practice of mourning, having a support community of mourning is one way that we can stay connected to what's happening. And so what I want to do is invite now in the chat. I want to invite people to share what's breaking your heart. And so again, anything that's happening now, that's happening in the world, what's breaking your heart? What can we share with you? Yeah, longing for human touch. Thank you, Shay. The disagreement. Yeah, people losing their livelihood, the environmental situation, social connection, longing. Yeah, all of the death, the abuse that's happening in families and with children. Inequity, let it come. Yeah, keep coming. People who don't seem to care. Not being able to see your mom in a nursing home. Yeah, people dying alone. These are really breaking my heart. Yeah, it sounds like people want to get back to business as usual. Yeah, the inequalities, inequities. Thank you, Wendy. So I just want to take let's take a few breaths here and like hold that. And you can keep it coming. Oh, no graduation or prom. Yeah, all that young people are losing. So let's hold that, holding your own personal pain. I'm sure that there's something in your own life right now, maybe you haven't expressed, that's painful. Just taking a moment, we're here together. Have a sense of potentially right now that there's some togetherness, that we're doing this together. Can you recognize, allow, and feel this pain? Let's hold it just for a few breaths, breathing into wherever you might feel this in your body. How do you notice this in your own experience? What might you be willing to touch just now for a few moments, a few breaths? What might you be willing to soften around in your own heart? And then also have a moment to connect in with, there's 60 of us here now, that each person here is holding some grief. And there's serious grief happening in the world. The death, exhaustion, the fear for livelihood, the incredible inequity of how this virus is impacting different populations. If it feels good to you, you can just put a hand on your body where you feel that pain. And allowing yourself to also shift from the feeling, the empathy, to the caring. Notice that you care. Notice that you care. Connecting in with the caring heart. And then again, when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Again, just take a moment to look around, be in your space, be here. Okay, and so from this place of connecting to our pain, and that transition from the empathy to the caring, this feels like a vital transition. It's from empathy to compassion. It's the heart that cares. So from that, let's move to the third step in the journey, which is the seeing with new eyes together. And so one of the ways that seeing with new eyes comes up is that we notice that it's so painful because we care so much, because there's so much love that we have for the world and for other beings. And that connection into the love and care can actually be a resource that helps us see with new eyes and go forth. The way that I often relate to the world is actually through anger. That can be my go-to response to things that I don't like. So, for example, one thing that's really, I would say has enraged me recently is some of the stories that were coming out about the PPP, the payroll protection grants, that are loans that are coming out of the government, and hearing about who's getting them and who got them first, and the way that some of the banks were managing those applications enraged me. Like, I felt so much rage. And this is where that quote from Mickey comes in, because when I feel under the rage, what I actually feel is this like intense helplessness. Like, I don't want the world to be like that. I want, if we're going to do this government program, I want the money to go to the businesses and the people that need it. And so, but I'm like, well, I can't do anything. There's a sense of like helplessness to control that. And then underneath that is like this deep sadness. So when I touch on that, I feel this grief that it's this way, that whatever's happening with that process or whoever's making decisions, that like this is the outcome, that this is really kind of devastatingly sad for me. And then underneath that, what I can connect to is that I'm so sad about that because I care. Like, I really care about small businesses and communities that have faced vast inequity, and I want them to have support. I don't want the actions that are coming out of this pandemic to just reinforce the status quo and the inequality, because I care. So we can start to allow, through our practice, our contemplative practice, we can allow our awareness to drop deeper and deeper and deeper and follow through the body, through the heart, to that loving, compassionate heart. And so that's one of the ways that we see with new eyes. We see that rage is actually showing me that I love the world, right? That my grief is showing me that I love the world. So I want to talk a little bit now, and I really want to focus on this piece of how do we see with new eyes? What can we do now to see with new eyes? So one of my greatest fears is that we'll come out of this whole situation and just like go right back to where we were before. So even if it takes a year and there's a vaccine, but we'll just like go back to using all the oil that we were using, go back to consuming all the things that we were consuming. Nothing will shift, right? It'll sort of be like, oh, great, that's over. That's my greatest fear, is that business as usual will be what comes out of this. And so then I started thinking about it, and it's also like this amazing moment, right? So I want you to think back to 2 months ago. So early March, maybe end of February, like where you were. 2 months ago, let's see, what's today? It's April 4th. I was actually in Montana on the Blackfeet Reservation teaching. And I was teaching with someone from California and someone from Washington State. And the guy from California, a teacher, a wonderful teacher named Matthew Brentsilver, was like Purelling all the time, like constantly had all these Purell bottles and like anything he touched. And I was sort of like, wow, dude, you're kind of being a little much. Like, you're so paranoid about this whole thing. And yeah, and our friend Bonnie Duran, who's an amazing teacher as well, she had just like flown in from Japan. By the time she was with us, had a cold. Anyway, it's so amazing to think about that. And then I like flew from there home. So to think about what has changed since early March, right? Things that are unimaginable to us across the globe have happened. Like, could you imagine what's happening now being possible 2 months ago? So in one way, that's this like amazing thing that like there is radical change possible in short periods of time for vast quantities of people. Like, that's possible. So there's a way that this whole situation can help open our eyes to what actually is possible. Could you imagine that people would just stop flying, that we would use such little oil? I couldn't imagine that 2 months ago. So what I start to think about is like, okay, I don't want it to go back to business as usual, but what would I like to see happen in this time? Like, how would I like to use my time, and how would I love for the world to use its time, this time, to shift things, potentially at a structural level, maybe at like a smaller level that starts turning the tide. There's even things like there's almost a way that we have a universal income, that the government sent everyone $1,200. Like, that's unimaginable. That the government would pay businesses to keep their employees, like trillions of dollars. Like, these things are all unimaginable. So, but they happened. Like, it's possible. So I want to invite us in this moment to, if you have like any dreams or visions, and again, this whole thing is like a huge journey that you might take and practice with alone or in community, and keep unpacking in this time that we have of social distancing. But what could you imagine being different in a year from now? Like, what would you love to dream and vision? Like, what? And if there's anything that you want to share in the chat, I'd love to welcome people to share your vision, your dreams. Like, what could happen? What could you see? What would you love to be created in a year from now? How could this situation change things towards the great turning? Make that possible, create opportunities. People eating less meat packing companies shutting down, right? Yeah, if we didn't drive to work one day a week. Yeah, universal healthcare. Kindness. Seeing that we're in this together. Yep. More work from home, less cars. third world countries being more sustained, indigenous justice. Yes. Part of my vision is that piece of like, that we start to notice who's vulnerable in our culture. We're seeing it now, and that we might start to take care of those who are vulnerable. Yeah. Air travel resets at a new baseline. Clean air stays. Yeah, people fall in love. The blue sky and having dinner at home. Yeah, and being in the woods rather than the mall. I love that one. More forest burning, more local resiliency and support, that these networks that are being created are sustained. Mm-hmm. More conversation, Green New Deal. Yes, please. Yes, may that happen. New ways to create the commons. Yes. Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Thank you. So the very last, just short contemplative practice I want to offer is, so again, coming back, taking a few breaths, having these images, these dreams, these visions, holding that in your heart and mind and body. And just taking a breath into your body and noticing what that feels like to vision, to dream, and to hear other people's visions and dreams. And as you connect into that, feeling it in your body, so imagine if all of this could kind of settle, you keep your attention centered in, for me, it feels like this pleasant energy. It's sort of joyful energy of visioning and dreaming. It's uplifted quality. And the question that I have then is, what could I do? What's a step for me? How might I go forth just today, this afternoon? And like, no forcing. This isn't a cognitive, like trying to figure it out. It's really a sense of dropping the question into your body, your heart, and let it reveal itself. So it might not reveal itself right now, but maybe in a dream, maybe in the shower, maybe later this afternoon or tomorrow. Just trusting that from the process of gratitude, connection, presence to our world, of honoring our pain, seeing with new eyes, this process can bring us to more clarity of our steps forward. And again, taking a breath and opening your eyes. So thank you for your practice and your visioning. And may it be so. May it be so. And before we close, we have probably just a few minutes to ask any questions that you might have. If anyone wants to ask a question, we could take a moment to do that. It seems like the chat can work if you want to put it in the chat, or you can put it in the Q&A box. If there's any question or sharing. Swaha. May it be so. Okay. Well, thank you all. I feel sad that I can't see you. It's really hard. I really like to teach and engage and have a conversation. But I like seeing you in the chat, and I'm connecting with you and appreciating you so much. And I hope that this work that we've done here together is useful and beneficial, and that we continue to do it. So the one question that did come in here was around social change work and any umbrella work groups coordinating. And I don't know actually of umbrella groups coordinating the work. I'm actually gonna ask Shay. Shay, do you know of anyone coordinating social change work? Yeah. And hey, maybe that's your work. Whoever asked that question, that might be your work to do to help in this the great turning. So yeah, thank you for the question. Okay, so I'm going to hand it back to Amy.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Thank you all for being here today with us. To find out more about online programs IB.me is offering for teens, young adults, and parents and teachers, please visit ibme.com/programs/online-programs. We're gonna post that in the chat box for more information. Our next session is this Thursday, May 7th, with Mary Evelyn Tucker and John Grimm. Please keep checking garrisoninstitute.org for updated listings of future sessions and to view the recording of this gathering and others. Again, we provide these gatherings sessions free of charge. If you would like to support this effort, please consider making a donation at garrisoninstitute.org. May everyone be happy, healthy, and safe.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you everyone at the Garrison Institute. And I hope that you get all the support you need to keep all of this amazing work happening. Thank you.